Jai Guru, everyone.
Jai Guru.
Jai Guru.
Welcome to the next episode of our podcast about the movie Awake, the Life of Yogananda. We're going through it minute by minute, and we have reached minute number 59. Priyak is smiling. I think he enjoys that I have a new intro every time.
I didn't think there was that many ways to change the intro, but you somehow
I'm changing it up every time. My name is Mike. I'm going to be hosting today. How are you guys doing, Priya and Chris?
All good, brother. Quite warm today.
Yeah.
Very good. Very good. Enjoying life. It's good. Good to be taking the time out though to talk about Yogananda during the day. So it's always something I look forward to. So yeah, happy to be here.
Oh, is that why we logged in today?
Exactly.
Yes. Talk about Yogananda. Yeah, that's a good reason to log on. So minute 59. Let me just summarize it a little bit. We have this picture of Sri Yukteswar where he's meditating, a super powerful picture, and then the narrator, he reads those lines from the autobiography of a yogi, where he basically says, "My guru called me over 10,000 miles like a lightning," right? He tells me to come back to India. And so this is what this episode is going to be about. It's going to be about Guruji making the trip back to India. He's going to take a ship from New York to England, going to stay there for a bit. Then he's going to go to the continent. He's going to do some sightseeing there. He's going to meet Therese of Connersreuth. We talked about her in a previous minute. Then he's going to go to Palestine, Egypt, back to India, and to great fanfare, he's going to arrive at Howrah Station in Kolkata. Let's start with talking a little bit about the Sri Yukteswar picture that we see there. I can't really tell, it's a bit grainy, but I can't really tell if his eyes are open or closed, but it definitely is a look that is pretty powerful. And it's what I think is one of my favorite Sri Yukteswar pictures. Chris?
Yeah, whenever you look at this picture, you can see is he in samadhi? Is there any context to this picture? I'm not sure. Yeah, I mean, he looks just completely transfixed, and the line that Guruji says that there's a thin veil between this world and the next, let's say, is capitulated really, or encapsulated in this image, isn't it? Because he looks, certainly there physically, but he might have checked out, and he's in another state. But I think his eyes are open. Yeah, I think his eyes are open in this picture, and he's just gazing up towards the Christ Conscious Center. But whenever I looked at this, I thought, like, you can kind of see his state of being that this individual has. His quite disciplinarian style is almost reflected in his stance, even though he's just in his normal sitting posture, but it's emanating from him, and he's almost got a smile there. So he's probably got a great sense of humor and everything. Just looking at it, it's a lovely picture. I'm just rambling about it, which I like the picture, but yeah, it's cool.
Yeah, almost smile is interesting, because Sri Yukteswar's pictures, when I look at the one in my room, I feel like if it's me projecting on him, but sometimes I look at it and it looks like a smile. Sometimes it looks like, no, it looks more like a disciplinarian kind of look. So
he looks ecstatic. I think that's the way to say it. His face is lifted. It's almost, his mouth is almost at a slant. But he definitely looks joyous, wondrous look on his face. It's whoever captured this is, thank you to them for all that time ago.
I would agree with that, and also it fits really well with the whole that he's like talking to Yogananda through intuition, right? So I feel like in that sense it fits well there. Priya?
Yeah, I was wondering, like, it's quite a, as you say, it's quite an intense and a scary image. Now we have like 2 or 3 categories of Guruji's images, and I suppose Sri Yukteswar fits into the same category, even though we've got very much fewer pictures of Sri Yukteswar and even fewer of Lahiri Mahashai, and none of Mahatma Babaji, and none of Krishna and Christ. But I was wondering what you guys thought of the categories of the pictures that are gurus that we have. So we've got ones where he's clearly, you know, joyous and smiling, or a sweet smile, like perhaps like the last, you know, the Lake Shrine picture, Lake Shrine dedication picture, for example, and the last smile before he took his Mahasamadhi. So there's that category of picture. Then there's one category where he's not, it's not really any sort of expression, where it's just, you know, like the standard pose behind me is just, you know, kind of a serene image. And then there's ones which are intense, and we've got Guruji's ones where he's also meditating, such as Sri Yukteswar, where his eyes are like, you know, rolled up. And I think that's what Sri Yukteswar's eyes are actually in this picture. They're rolled up, and he's in some intense meditative experience. So I was just wondering which category of picture A, most moves you, and B, you prefer to have on to meditate to when you're praying to the gurus, or if you're just you know, starting your meditation perhaps.
I would say they move you in different ways, right? Like I have this picture where Guruji smiles next to my bedside table, and I really need that one. I feel like that one is kind of always like, I look at this and it feels like, oh yeah, Guruji is saying like, good job, Mike, you're doing great. But yeah, you're at this kind of picture would probably fit really well in a meditation room, right? Because it feels like he's in ecstasy, and that's kind of where you want to go. But I feel like every kind of expression has its place. And like, for example, I have this one here in my kitchen, young Yogananda. That's like a recent edition. And I don't know, I feel like they all grew on me in their own way.
I have one of those digital photo frames, and I've uploaded tons of photos, and I have all the gurus there, and you know, we have a cleaner that comes and goes, and you know, she was looking at Sri Yukteswar. She's like, oh, you know, who is this? Is this, you know, your grandfather kind of thing? Because he kind of looks kind of similar to my dad in some ways. Both have like this little mustache and things like this. So I have like different, I suppose, like Mike just said, you know, they all have different effects, and you know, depending on the moment that I'm in, you know, I'll react differently to them. But I have a very endearing feeling towards the picture of Lahiri Mahashai for some reason. But then I love seeing this picture. It's very inspiring, of Sri Yukteswar. So maybe in moments where I feel like I should be going deeper in meditations or going longer, and I see this picture, it's that little bit of motivation. So yeah, I'll chicken out and say it depends. You know, I don't necessarily have a favorite, but yeah, I agree with Mike. Like the picture of Guruji smiling is probably the one that you know, warms my heart every time I see it. So, you know, if I was pushed, I would go with that.
Nice. All right, enough about pictures. Let's go. So the context is Guruji is being called by Sri Yukteswar to come back to India. And when you read Phil Goldberg's book, he would give you some context about the time that we are in right now. We are in 1935, and since 1933, you would say America is in a period called the Great Depression. So it is economically very difficult. The unemployment rate has raised up to 25%. Like I can read a little piece here. It says, during the 6 years between Yogananda's return from Mexico and his departure for India in 1935, the world economy sank at an unprecedented rate, causing massive deprivation and suffering. In the US, unemployment skyrocketed from 3.2% in 1929 to 25% in 1933. And so this is, of course, Guruji in his humility, something he would never mention in his autobiography. In the book, it's also not really mentioned. In the movie, I mean, it's also not really mentioned. But it is definitely a factor. And of course, when Sri Yukteswar says come, Guruji could have probably said, Master, it's Great Depression, I can't come. It's difficult, there's no money and stuff. But that's not what he did. He had, of course, he had help from some of his students. We will talk about this in a bit, like Rajasi played a role in this again. But it's also just Guruji is the man that can make everything possible, no matter in what time. And let's read some more. Oh yeah, Chris, you want to go first?
It's triggering a memory of Guruji talking about money, and somebody maybe talking to Guruji about earning money, investing and things like that. And the story, I think, goes that Guruji was saying, is it in a lesson, one of the early lessons maybe, but I think he was saying about how he was able to earn money whenever he wanted to, but he didn't put his resources, his energies into that. So he invested, I think, into the stocks, maybe into housing or property. And he was able to make a trade or something along those lines. And he made a certain amount of money that he said to somebody that he would make within a certain amount of time. So he was able to execute on this goal that he had to make, say, £5,000 or whatever it might have been, within the exact amount of time. So whenever I was reading this story, it reminds me of the story of the power of is it Power of Now, or how does that go? I haven't read that, but you draw everything to you. Yogananda was able to demonstrate that with financials as well. So I'm sure he had his options, how he might be able to bring money in, and he focused on anchoring it into the SRF. And putting his energies into that, rather than going out to the stock market and maybe earning, making a lot of money with his intuitive sense.
Yeah, and Guruji has remarked on this a few times, how to live a simple life, how greed has basically caused a lot of the problems in the Great Depression, and he mocked the kind of ideas for solution of the big industrialists, of saying, yeah, people should just take out credit and buy more to create demand. And according to him, that was not at all the way to fix the economy. It was more about living simply. And he talks about people living in spiritual communities and growing vegetables and having livestock to have milk and wool and things, like being self-sufficient, basically. That was his idea. There is one card that you could read, Chris, that talks a little bit about this time.
Sure. Yogananda would occasionally comment on world events, sometimes in surprising ways. In the April 1932 East-West, for instance, he published a 4-page essay titled "How to Burn Out the Roots of Depression by Divine Methods," leading with compassion for the well-dressed men and women without money in their pockets or food in their stomachs. He described society's tumult of inequalities and injustices, and mocked the calls of business interest for consumers to create demand by purchasing goods on credit. He identified selfishness as the true origin of economic distress and extolled simple living. His proposed solutions sound almost Marxist, with food, medical care, and education for all. At the same time, while he credits communist Russia for eliminating unemployment, he condemns its unchristian, unspiritual laws of wholesale murder and slaughter. That's Philip Goldberg.
Surprisingly relevant for today, especially with our economic downturn as we're experiencing this time of recording, which is June 2022, and also the atrocities that are happening in Russia right now. Yeah, Chris?
Yeah, it sort of spurs some thought. Whatever, I've never been political. I've never really cared too much. I did study some economics at university, but I was never overtly, interested in it to a degree or another. But when I think about it, I think about what's ideal and what's realistic in these times. And reading this is very interesting. That his proposed solutions almost sound Marxist. That's the ultimate ideal, isn't it, of where we might all go, where there's no selfishness in society, but we talk about being in the Kali Yuga and the Dwapara Yuga, and we're coming into these ages where enlightenment is I suppose is coming. Maybe the second coming of Christ is coming to all of our consciousness. So maybe we're not able to live in certain ways. And it might simply be in time we'll move towards these things. And then you see that in this right and left debate all the time between open markets and more, borderless, say, markets. But yeah, it's very interesting. And Yogananda was quite outspoken, which does surprise me, because I suppose we don't really hear too much about it in the teachings, just day to day, really. But yeah.
I think one reason for that is that a lot of the remarks he made during the Great Depression, they weren't really relevant in the 70s, maybe, because the realities had been so different. It's just right now that we kind of feel like we're coming full circle with everything. But we'll see. Let's not dwell on the doom and gloom, and let's go.
I'm positive.
Yeah. So Guruji, there was this Great Depression, and you know what Guruji says? I'm going to India. And not only am I going to India, I want to make some stops in Europe. I want to see some spiritual sites. He's doing a pilgrimage. So this is as positive as you can get.
Was it funded? Was it funded by Rajasi, this trip?
It was. Yeah, you're right.
So he was able to. He was able to push the boat out a bit, the steamboat.
He wrote, so he wrote him a generous check, and he even, I'm not sure if that's what everyone did at the time, I doubt it, or maybe rich people did it. He took his Ford, put it on the ship with him, and used it to drive all over England, Europe, continental Europe, Palestine, Egypt, and then India, right? So that is pretty impressive. So let me read
before you go to that, so he got this call, but he doesn't say why really. He mentions like a little bit about like, if you would see me, so it kind of indicates that Sri Yukteswar is not going to be around for much longer. We know that that's what actually happened. But do you think there was other more deeper reasons for his going back? Like, for example, we've got probably some of the best chapters of the autobiography of a yogi, haven't we, covered in that sojourn back to India, and then then from there back to America. So I was just wondering, like, because if you would see me, like, obviously they're both like omniscient, so they don't need to be in each other's physical presence per se. So Sri Yukteswar probably could have left his body without seeing Guruji one last time. It's not in the same way that we would like want to see. Well, I don't think it's the same way that we would want to see a loved one before our last sort of days. But yeah, I thought we could discuss what other motivations there could have been for this recall, because as we've just put it, it was at the time of the Great Depression, and Sri Yukteswar was certainly very well read, so he would have known about the economic state of affairs, and also World War I just happening, and the build up to World War II, and all that kind of stuff. So he would have known that this is not just like a polite request or can you just, pop around, come for a weekend flight, as we can do nowadays. This was, well, he was there for away from America for 18 months or something along those lines. It was definitely over a year. So this is a colossal undertaking especially when you're, establishing something pretty huge in USA. And, he's going through these legal battles, as we know, with Swami Dhirananda. And was it with Nirode? I can't remember, one of the two. But so it wasn't a small request really from Sri Yukteswar, and not one that was certainly easily fulfillable by Paramahansa Yogananda. Mike?
You want to go first, Chris?
No, go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, no, of course, you're absolutely right, Priyank. Like you mentioned, that Guruji would arrive, right? And then Guruji has this funny thing, right, where whenever a loved one dies, he has to be away, but but not that far away. He needs to be close for that one. Of course, there's one thing I can actually read now, because I think it's quite relevant. It is from the SRF website, where they talk about his return to India. And they mention a few things that are interesting. So they say, during Yogananda's year-long sojourn in his native land, he gave classes and Kriya Yoga initiation in cities throughout the subcontinent. He also enjoyed meeting with Mahatma Gandhi, who we will talk about in the next episode, who requested initiation into Kriya Yoga. He met Nobel Prize-winning physicist Sir C.V. Raman, and some of India's most renowned spiritual figures, including Ramana Maharshi and Anandamoy Ma. Yeah, so he came back as this big celebrity this time. It wasn't like when he left, like the news of Yogananda building this organization, being this rock star yogi in America, has not been lost on Indian society. They were all aware of what happened in the US. It was during this year that Sri Yukteswar bestowed on him India's highest spiritual title, Paramahansa. That was a big deal as well. Literally, it means supreme swan, a symbol of spiritual discrimination. The title signifies one who is established in the ultimate state of union with God. Then, while in India, Yogananda secured a permanent foundation for his work there. Yogoda Satsanga Society of India. From its headquarters, bottom left, so there's a picture that we're not showing right now, but there is a picture of the Dakshineswar headquarters on the Ganges near Kolkata, and the original ashram in Ranchi. The society continues to thrive to this day, with schools, ashrams, meditation centers, and charitable work throughout the subcontinent. And that was the point I was trying to make, that Guruji also came back to settle the legal affairs. When Sri Yukteswar passes away, who's going to be the successor? Who's going to own the ashram? Who's going to run this society in the absence of Sri Yukteswar and Guruji? Because Guruji would eventually return back to the US. And so I think this is one of the reasons why Sri Yukteswar called him back to manage all the affairs. Chris?
The first thing that popped into my mind was almost that he was paying almost respects to Yogananda. Yogananda often talked about, he wanted to go back to India. He struggled from time with the various challenges in the United States, and maybe to from time to time missed India and missed the people of India. So partly, to my mind, that I think it was a good time for Yogananda to come back and maybe drink from the well that is the spirit of India and refresh that part of the soul. But I agree. I think it's probably multifaceted, right? There's a lot of administrative things going on, and he's taking new titles and things like this. So it's probably multifaceted. But part of my intuitive sense was he wanted to almost reward Yogananda, but that's purely speculation on my part.
And then in the movie, you see those amazing pictures of Guruji arriving. You see him in the fort standing up with crowds of people around, and you see him with different celebrities, people putting garlands on him.
I know a little bit about who was there, actually. It's from the book.
All right.
So in that picture where he's like garlanded with flowers, apparently the Maharaja of Qasim Bazar, the son of the original patron who gave us the original palace for the Yoga school, that's the guy on his left with that with the glasses. If you just pause, and also to the right are, which are actually in the picture, but they're in the picture for the book, are his two brothers Sananda Lal Ghosh and Vishnu Charan Ghosh are there in that initial meeting. And also he stayed in the gateway of India. There was also the picture of the gateway of India and the Taj Mahal hotel where Yogananda stayed during his arrival. And also he's shaking hands with someone in that picture, and that is with Nobel Prize winning physicist Sir C.V. Raman, who's also known in physics for the Raman effect of scattering, inelastic scattering of photons. So yeah,
right.
those are some of the people that were in that quick, 1 second here and there shot.
Amazing. Yeah, of course, the Maharaja of Qasim Bazar, we talked about him because his father gave him the property in Ranchi, right, where he established his first school.
Yeah.
And Vishnu Lal Ghosh, his youngest brother, he became this famous yoga teacher who was like one of his students was Bikram, right?
Mm.
And we talked about Bikram in another episode, right? So this is how things kind of come full circle in that sense. Yeah, that must have been quite Yogananda said he was surprised by the amount of people who received him when he came back to India. He came back as this big rock star. Yeah, and he was then, of course, had access to a lot of India's high society at the time, and kept being invited and everything, which was great. So should we go next to how he traveled through Europe?
Yeah.
That is like something that they don't really mention much in the film, but Guruji, he was of course in the UK before, but this time it is he has more time, and he has like the same effect, not maybe to the extent that it is in India, but people know him. He goes to London, and he gives lectures there. He gives one lecture in Caxton Hall, which is a place that I sought out with my friend Mohit, friend of the show, who was in one episode before. And we found out that Caxton Hall had been turned into a housing estate, but we were kindly led into the property, and we meditated there, and we were like,
was there one of those plaques that said Paramahansa Yogananda was here on this date?
That was not. No.
Oh man,
maybe we should have added one.
I'm gonna go spray paint one on.
Yeah, I think it's not really an event venue anymore, Caxton Hall, and maybe that's why people who live there, they don't really want the fanfare. But it is still in existence, which I found pretty interesting. Then in the autobiography it says he stayed with the name just escaped me, but with someone in Scotland at his estate.
Sir Harry Lauder.
Sir Harry Lauder, that's it. Thank you, Priyank.
Popular singer in the era, apparently.
There you go. Okay, and then let's go through some parts of the autobiography. I'm going to read a short section here.
And also in the London Centre like history wall, they've got like a little picture, and it says Yogananda establishes the London Centre of Self-Realization Fellowship, which is quite a nice one.
In 1935, right?
Yeah.
There's a story as well about how he indirectly predicted that the or the center would be based where it is today.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, there he kind of pointed down a street or something, or he talked about it in a way that showed that he saw something.
Is this something that you know through your mind's eye? Because I've never heard of such a story.
No, somebody told me at the center, London Center, one time.
Did he have long hair, flowing hair, and an orange robe?
Exactly. Yeah. No. Somebody did tell me at London Center that supposedly there were conversations happening when he was there, and he was down Baker Street or something like that, and he said something to the effect of there will be a center near here, or
That's so cool.
Amazing. Yeah. I really like that story. I mean, definitely it makes the London Center the oldest SRF center in Europe.
One of them.
That
one
much
of them,
is certain.
I reckon he probably like walked past Chiltern Street and just like touched the wall, touched one of the bricks.
Mm-hmm. he made the building appear. It came out of nowhere.
No, but what's it called? That London Center, though, that building was only purchased about 15 years ago, so they would have had a different center back then. Which
oh yeah, absolutely, yeah. But I'm not sure how old the building is. It might have stood already at the time.
Definitely, yeah, much older than.
I mean, it is London.
80 years old.
Probably he walked through London back then, and it looked exactly the way it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No,
that's great.
Sorry, Chris, say that again. You've lagged out. I think you.
Internet gone again.
Yeah.
Just on the All
right, Mike, carry on.
Yeah. So let's start. I'm going to start reading a section from the autobiography where he starts traveling. He says, "I sailed from New York on June 9th, 1935 on the Europa. 2 students accompanied me. My secretary, Mr. C. Richard Wright, and an elderly lady from Cincinnati, Miss Etty Bletch. We enjoyed the days of ocean peace, a welcome contrast to the past hurried weeks. Our period of leisure was short-lived. The speed of modern boats has some regrettable features." Yeah, you should see like airplanes now. Like now it's even less of a.
Well, Korea is the airplane route, so maybe you already saw it.
That is correct. And he said that even, right? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
He must have taken some airplanes in his time, Guruji, as well. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, actually, I don't know, because I don't think commercial flight wasn't around at the time, was it? I don't think.
Yeah, it was post, wasn't it? Post.
Yeah. Would be interesting to find out if he ever took an airplane, if anybody knows. Do you want to continue reading, Priyank?
Yeah. So the travel guide, which section?
Yes. We enjoyed every minute.
We enjoyed every minute of our tour through Germany, Holland, France, and the Swiss Alps. In Italy, we made a special trip to Assisi to honor the apostle of humility, Saint Francis. The European tour ended in Greece, where we viewed the Athenian temples and saw the prison in which the gentle Socrates had drunk his death poison. We enjoyed every minute of a tour through Germany, Holland, France.
Oh, it's the same thing again. Okay.
Interesting about Assisi. Heard some rumors that Yogananda in a past life was intimately connected to the Saint Francis of Assisi.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've heard that too. It's funny. My sister is there right now. Like this morning, she sent me a picture of her in Assisi, and I was like, "Ah, great."
My parents just got back from there yesterday.
Really?
My mom's a big fan, so she was sending me all the pictures and videos. Just
amazing.
I was there a couple of years ago. Meditated next to his tombstone, and then also where he used to meditate in the caves on the hills.
Mm-hmm. I find it so amazing how they did it in Assisi, how they actually dug down below the church, right? And then they found the tomb, but they didn't excavate it. They just left it and built like the shrine around it. And it has such a good vibration.
Yeah.
I hope I'll go there again soon. Maybe this year in the end of the summer, because it's kind of one of my favorite trips.
Mhm.
Yeah.
It's on my bucket list.
Chris, do you want to continue?
Sure. We took ship over the sunny Mediterranean, disembarking at Palestine. Wandering day after day over the Holy Land, I was more than ever convinced of the value of pilgrimage. To the sensitive heart, the Spirit of Christ is all pervasive in Palestine. I walked reverently by his side at Bethlehem. Gethsemane, is that how you say it? Gethsemane, Calvary, the Holy Mount of Olives, and the River Jordan and the Sea of Galilee. Our little party visited the birth manger, Joseph's carpenter shop, and the tomb of Lazarus, the house of Martha and Mary, the hall of the Last Supper. Antiquity unfolded scene by scene. I saw the divine drama that Christ once played for the ages. On to Egypt, with its modern Cairo and ancient pyramids. Then a boat down the long Red Sea, over the vast Arabian Sea. Lo, India.
We should have got Mike. We should have got Agam in for this episode. He would have really loved this section on Jordan. He could have told us. He could have told us everything about this place.
Yeah, that's a friend of ours who's very, very much into traveling and
traveling. No, not just traveling. Traveling in this very specific region.
Yeah,
the Middle East.
Yeah, we have. Yeah, Agam would be an expert at this because he really loves this region. Yeah. I find it great that Guruji was such a curious traveler and that he appreciated every place that he went to with such an enthusiasm, right? And I feel like it adds something. Like if you ever, that's why I find this is a good travel guide for devotees. Because now, next time you go to London, next time you go to Germany, next time you go to Italy, Greece, Palestine, Egypt, you can always say Guruji was also here. You can meditate on his presence, and you can, especially in the Palestine area, he kind of went into a lot of detail to the places that he went to, and you can like go to most of them. Like I went to Israel once, and I saw most of those places that he mentioned here. Not all of them. Like I don't know where or what Calvary is, but I should probably look it up. But it is like it adds an extra layer for me. Like when you go to Assisi, it already is such a holy place, but you can also say, yeah, Guruji was here too, not just Saint Francis. They were both here.
Calvary is the spot outside Jerusalem where Jesus was crucified, according to the gospel.
Ah, okay. Then I was there. Okay. Okay.
Site of Calvary.
They did that really well in Jerusalem. They basically did the part where Jesus carried the cross, and it's all inside a church now. And basically, you can walk from point to point where he carried the cross until the place where he was crucified.
What do you say to Mike? Well, Mike, what do you say to people that say that whole experience would be too sorrowful, in the sense that it would bring back those painful, dramas that Christ had to go through? Well, you've been there now. What would you say to me if I said that?
I mean, I feel the same way, that I find it's a very heavy subject, but when you're there, you don't feel it like that. When you're there, you just feel all this uplifting, like kind of presence, and that's why I think it's totally worth going if you plan on it. And you have to say that Christ did that for us, right? He didn't do it to be like pitied or something, he did it, and then a few days later he resurrected his body, right, and appeared to his disciples. Chris?
Yeah. Although the story is brutal to kind of relive and think about. I do have a little bit of a bugbear whenever I see images of Jesus, and it's always him on the cross. It's always him suffering. And yes, I understand the point of that is to say, look, he's died for our sins, etc., and don't make it go for be for nothing. But the life of Jesus was really one of love, wasn't it? So and that's what prevailed over that whole story. So I'm not surprised, Mike, to hear that you've been there and it feels different, because I think Jesus, if he was like the King of Hearts, let's say, you see images also of him and the light is shining through his heart, which I love those images, because I think that's a fair depiction of him and his and the legacy that he left behind, and I suppose the energy that he would have anchored into that space. I would have thought, Priyank, that would be the sell to say, that's what you're going to experience, because that's what prevails over time.
True. Yeah, the reason I say it is because I think Mike, you were there. We were having an auction once at the at SRF London Centre, a charity auction to raise funds for a monk's visit, and like we had all these things, like people painted things and made things, and I sold some old stuff that I had, for example, and everything sold really well, and we raised a lot of money. But the one thing that did not sell was this beautiful porcelain sculpture of Christ on the cross. And I was really shocked by this, and I asked some of the people, like, why didn't you bid for this? This is worth hundreds of pounds, and you could have just got it for pretty much nothing. And they all said, well, a lot of people said, it's just that is not the image of Christ I want to have in my home. It's just too sorrowful. And that this is the background of the question that I asked. But personally, I really like the pictures of Christ where, like, either he's with a lamb, he's holding a lamb, and then you imagine yourself to be that lamb. And then I also like him with the Virgin as a child. I really like those images as well.
Yeah, I think the one that SRF has is lovely, isn't it? It's him, just as possibly he looked like and was depicted. So smiling gently, with a knowing gaze that is very forgiving and loving, isn't it? That picture that the SRF has. It's
and if you want to see the original, it's at the Riverside Church in New York. Apparently SRF has a special permission to view that, to have that image as their own for the altar.
Yeah, maybe we should make a pilgrimage there one time.
Let's do it. Who's the artist? I've forgotten.
Heinrich Hoffmann.
Heinrich Hoffmann, that's it. Yeah, and there's some pretty cool stories about him as well, isn't there? About his visions and stuff of Christ.
Yeah, and he painted multiple pictures of him, and they're all really nice.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. All right. So one more thing we want to talk about is they show a beautiful picture of Guruji and his discipleship next to him, presumably at Mother Center. And they show this when he says, I've been here for 15 years. And it looks like this group of disciples, that's like a representation of the work that he has done. And when I look at this picture, some of the faces, of course, they are very familiar. You see Rajarsi Chanakananda next to him, who we just mentioned, who helped him finance the trip to India. Then you see Dayamata sitting in front of him, and I think Mrinalini Mata is there as well. Are there any more faces that you spotted, Priyank, in this picture?
Yeah, Narode is there.
I see the one on the very left.
Yeah, you can't miss Narode. He's got such a unique look. That sly look. The look of events to come.
Yeah. And I think it's that Dr. Lewis, maybe 3 to the right of him.
Oh yes, that is Dr. Lewis. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So we got some of the faces.
Got some stalwart legends of the Self-Realization Fellowship, Order of Disciples.
Yeah, that must have been a very blessed occasion to be there. There's a section in the autobiography that I want to read quickly, because he talks about Saint Lin. That's how he called Rajasi at the time. I'm guessing that was his nickname. And he says, in him and a number of other Occidentals, I happily see a fulfillment of Babaji's prophecy that the West too would produce saints of true self-realization through the ancient yogic path. And I'm guessing that quite a lot of those would be in this picture. I don't really know if she's on this picture or not. Sister Gyana Mata, she would be the one who was leading the ashram in Guruji's absence. She was leading Mother Center.
I think she could be the one that's on the far right. That's like just no consideration for the picture, just and it fits her personality, because she's literally just, her gaze is at the feet of Guruji and nowhere else.
Yeah, that would make sense. The one who's turned to the right.
Yeah, it's turned, and I don't care for pictures. My wife hates pictures.
All right. Yeah, it's not everybody's thing, right? I think Lahiri Maharshi famously wasn't a fan of pictures either. Nice. Okay, so I think we have wrapped up that minute pretty well. Is there anything you want to add, Priyank or Chris?
There was just a couple of comments on what the narrator said in this minute when he said on behalf of Guruji, there's a thin screen of ether between the world and my Guru, and of course we have this image of Sri Yukteswar, and then he says he's hunting me day and night. I just thought that bit was quite insightful still, that I don't know when exactly that quote was taken from. I don't know if you guys know, but his guru was very, very strict with making sure Guruji was sticking on the path of progression. And when he says he's hunting me day and night, I just thought it was quite funny in some ways. Like, he's still, maybe no matter where he is in the world, able to be, shortening that 10,000 mile distance or whatever it is, and staying on top of it in some ways. And it's just this never-ending relationship of him helping him on his way. So I just thought that was a funny comment to include there. And then as well, the general concept of transversing 10,000 miles in a twinkling of an eye, that his message was sent to him. Like, what little do we know of the nature of consciousness and reality, and like you mentioned that Yogananda talked about living a simple life, and then we wouldn't have all these problems in the economy and suffering. And I think a lot of people might see that as like, oh, well, then you're not one for progress, and you're going backward, and you're going to live in a cave. I think all these, you talk to people, all these conversations come about, but yet look at what's potentially being told here, that he's 10,000 miles away, but yet he's able to send communications to Sri Yukteswar, to Guruji. How are they doing that? There's a greater mystery at play here, and a greater something greater to unlock.
Interesting you should raise that, Chris. So that part where he says there's a thin screen of ether between the world and my Guru is actually taken from a letter Sri Yogananda wrote to Rajarsi Janakananda, And the letter was after Sri Yukteswar took his Mahasamadhi. So this was in 1936. And the actual quote is, there is just a thin screen of ether between the world and Master, i.e. Sri Yukteswar. He is more real to me than ever and of great influence, for he is guiding me without the impediment of a body and worldly limitations. Whenever I arrived at a crossroad in my life, he has torn the ether as if with a knife and shown himself to me. All that he has said during his lifetime on earth, he is now repeating within me now. Yogananda, I am not only in Serampore, but everywhere, and from omnipresence I shall guide thee. So so this so haunting me. So he's haunting me day and night. So this is what he's. So I think obviously some artistic license is used by the producers there, because this was obviously post his passing, not before. But I think they've done it well all the same. Good, very good observation.
Yeah, it was curious choice of words, and I thought, did Guruji say that? Maybe if he did it, it's like a tongue-in-cheek thing, but maybe quite apt to the relationship and Sri Yukteswar's style of teaching. But
the other thing I wanted to just he said his message penetrated my being like a flash of lightning. Now that's not a small small experience, is it? Lightning is this hot, white, exhilarating thing. So it's just, it's not something that Yogananda could just ignore and say, no, I'm busy, I'll come in like 3 years.
I mean, imagine the whole audacity, right? Like how those masters, imagine you are like meditating and Guruji appears to you and goes like, hey, do this, and you're like, no, I'm busy, I'm sorry.
I'm going through a tunnel. I can't hear you.
McBain from The Simpsons comes to mind. Do it now.
Babe. Exactly.
Yes.
Yeah, that was Sri Yukteswar in this moment.
Suddenly dawns a German accent. Yeah.
Yes, Austrian, not German.
Austrian. Sorry.
All right. Okay, I think we've done this this minute justice, and in the next episode we will talk about Mahatma Gandhi and his interactions with Guruji, and Guruji initiating him into Kriya Yoga.
Yes,
all
and
those
also
lovely things.
And also Richard Wright, which we've glossed over, but he's obviously a significant person in Paramahansa Yogananda's life, especially because of his journal. But we'll discuss him in the next episode as well.
Absolutely. Okay. Jai Guru, everybody. Thank you for joining.
Jai Guru.